Hi, welcome to Menopause Chicks. I'm Shirley Weir, and this is a very special edition of Office Hours because today I am welcoming my friend, my mentor, and my colleague, Debbie Brown. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Shirley. How are you?
I'm great. I can't tell you how many times I have manifested this day. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to share with everyone how we met. And then we're going to dive into your story and the work that you're doing now. Sound good?
Absolutely. Good.
Okay. So first of all, Debbie Brown is thehormonenurse.com. So go check that out. But Debbie was so influential in getting my health on track. I have a couple stories to share with you about the first time I met Debbie. I remember, I was in my early 40s. And I remember sitting down with her and, of course, listing off the classics. So sleep deprivation, mood changes, PMS for the first time in my life, brain fog. And she nodded very kindly and graciously and then told me that those are all very common experiences for women who are navigating perimenopause. And she looked up from her sheet and she said, "And what about your libido?" And, I was so exhausted at that point that yes, my libido had been low, but it hadn't even fazed me to put that on my list of concerns to talk about with a health professional. And then now I've since learned, Debbie, that that's like so common for women who are holding up the world and families and community, right?
Right. Absolutely. One of the top 3 symptoms I heard about for years.
Yeah.
And it's so concerning for a lot of women. We can touch on that later, but it can really destroy a relationship, and especially if you don't talk about it.
Exactly. Okay, so hold that thought because we're going to get into that in a second. And the next thing I just wanted to include in my introductory remarks is menopausechicks.com, Menopause Chicks private online community would not exist without Debbie Brown. So she accepted my call. She shared information and education graciously. She put me on the path to other learning so that I could build this community while she was managing her own practice, while she was doing research in another province. And she continues to moderate conversations, answer questions and comments for the women in our private online community. So we owe you a debt of gratitude, Debbie. And that is one of the reasons why I'm really excited about some of the information and announcements that you have for us today. So let's begin with your story. How did you become thehormonenurse.com?
Okay, let's go back quite a few years, and I'm going to give you my story as to why a registered nurse would have an interest in hormones, perimenopause, and menopause. Yes. First of all, perimenopause is not a word I remember from my nursing training. I don't think it was ever discussed. Menopause, maybe 30 seconds in my training.
Really?
So when I was in my mid-40s and I was working as a nurse and raising a family, and the first sign for me was extreme PMS. 10 days before my periods, it was like the aliens set in, and I had anger. I had no tolerance for stress. I was yelling and screaming. I just thought, oh my God, who is this person? And then I started having the sleepless nights, heart palpitations, heavy flow in my periods, cramping from my periods. And I'm thinking, okay, well, there's something wrong here. And my sister, who was a year older than me at that time, she still is a year older than me, she called me and she goes, "I'm going through the same thing, but I just read a book by Suzanne Summers called The Sexy Years." And I'm thinking to myself, Suzanne Summers is Chrissy Snow of Three's Company. What would she know about anything? She plays a ditzy blonde. Well, sure enough, I read her book and it was like it was written for me. It's talking about all these symptoms and how you can change your life by balancing your hormones. And so now I'm on a mission. Okay, so I read this book and I'm ready to make a doctor's appointment, and I sit with my doctor and I'm describing all this, and he says, it could be hormones, and come and see me when you're 2 years postmenopausal. And I'm thinking, oh my God, 2 years menopausal, that doesn't happen till my 50s, and I'm here, mid 40s. I'm going to jump off a bridge if I have to wait that long. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And I was too embarrassed to ask him to recommend bioidentical hormones for me as Suzanne Summers is recommending in her book. I'm sure he would have just
because of the stigma.
The stigma, don't, just like Dr. Google, don't, these celebrities are writing books all the time. So I'm still on a mission. So I remember leaving his office very kind of deflated and going downstairs. There's a pharmacy in his main floor of his office, and it says, we compound bioidentical hormones. I think this is what Suzanne Summers was talking about, bioidentical hormones. And so I waited for the pharmacist to have a few minutes, and I asked him, who's prescribing these hormones? I need some help here. He goes, well, actually, to tell you the truth, I've only had 2 prescriptions. One was from a doctor who's no longer practicing, and the other one is a doctor who he mentioned the office, and it was only a couple blocks away. So here I am, I'm hoofing it down to the office, like, I'm going to talk to these people. So I go up to the clinic receptionist. There's 2 young ladies sitting there. I don't know if they're nurses or receptionists. And I said, I would like to make an appointment to talk to a doctor about bioidentical hormones. They looked at each other, looked at me, laughed, and said, we don't do dental work here. No, I said, I'm talking bioidentical hormones. It's not dental work. And so the doctor, I guess, heard this. He came out. He goes, I'm sorry. He goes, I know what you're talking about, but I've only written 1 script before. And that lady knew exactly what she wanted. She had been on them before. So I just duplicated her prescription. So,
wow.
Yeah. And so from there on, okay, I kept on, it was all about education for me.
Just so we can, this is 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah. This is 20 years ago.
Just set a timeline. This is 20 years ago.
This is 20 years ago. 60. I was 45 or so. And then then I was on a mission now. I thought, okay, I'm going to learn about this. And if I, come hell or high water, I'm going to learn about these hormones. So I read every book I could get my hands on. At that time, this is 20 years ago, there was not a lot about bioidentical hormones, but my favorite book was written by Dr. John Lee. The title of the book was What Your Doctor Does Not Tell You About Menopause. And it was my Bible.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm looking for at the back, who can I contact in my area to help me with this? And there was basically nobody. I'm still on a mission. So I went to every conference I could attend. The American Academy for Anti-Aging Medicine had great, twice a year, they had great venues, and you could go in there and you could sit for 4 days, learn nothing about, everything you wanted to know about bioidentical hormones. There's thought leaders in this group. It was so wonderful. And then I started attending the naturopathic conferences because I was an RN and I was allowed to get into some of these conferences. And I finally figured it out, and I balanced my hormones by myself. And usually, what I did, I traveled quite a bit to the US for work at that time. Anytime I was down there, I'd pick up myself a container of bioidentical progesterone, and I would apply that, as per instructions. Worked on my adrenals. Now, the adrenal thing we can talk about another time, or we can talk about today. Women and men have so much stress, and stress plays havoc on our adrenals. And if your cortisol levels are too high or too low, your cortisol will affect your sex hormones. It'll affect your thyroid hormones, and usually it goes hand in hand. You've got hormone imbalances, you have adrenal fatigue, and you have hypothyroid. They're so common. So, anyways, going on, my girlfriends and we're all turning sort of late 40s, early 50s, all complaining about the same thing. And I, went on a mission. We balanced everybody's hormones, and we would get together for lunch, and we would send out a mad email. I'm out of progesterone cream. Bring your cream to lunch, and we'd be squirting creams in little containers and sharing our creams. And, and from then on, somebody asked me, why don't you open a clinic to help women? And I said, well, I can't do that. I'm a nurse. And I thought, oh, maybe I can do that, So here, with no business experience, I think 6 months later, I opened my doors, and it was called Alternative Hormone Solutions. And I think in the 6-7 years I had my clinic, I saw hundreds and hundreds of women. And I think that the main thing that sort of resonates with me, Shirley, is women, when they sat down, you go through your symptoms, you're not, okay, yeah, I understand what's going on. They actually, felt validated.
Absolutely.
Like, so many women go to the doctors with the same type of symptoms. Oh, you're depressed. Let's give you a little bit of a antidepressant. Let's give you some sleeping pills. Let's give you some birth control pills for that heavy bleeding. You know, and it's not a fix, or I mean, it's not a remedy. It's just it's a Band-Aid.
It's a duct solution.
It's a duct tape, yeah. You know, and you know, like you say many times, perimenopause, menopause, it's not a disease. No. It's just a hormone imbalance, and some women are affected more so than others. Yeah. You know, 20% of women just sort of breeze through it. 20% of women are rocked upside down and they don't know what to do. And the ones in between just don't, you know something's not quite right and would like to fix it. Yeah. So it's simple for so many women to get your hormones imbalanced. Yeah. And, you know, and I just read an article the other day, and I'm always searching for something. There's Dr. Cheryl Ross. She's an OBGYN at Providence St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica. She said mood swings, depression, anxiety, and anger, rage, and crying fits are normal and very common. They're not normal. They're not normal. Common. They are not normal. They're common. Right. And we should not normalize these symptoms that we are disrupting our lives. Yeah. So I held my clinic for 6-7 years, sort of went into retirement. And then this last year, I missed it. Every time I ran across women, you know, you're in a social circle and women start talking about, I can't sleep at night, I have anxiety. And I think, did you ever think about your hormones might be out of balance? And you know, then I reconnected with Shirley, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to start this up again. And just remotely, I'm doing video conferences, teleconferences with women and, you know, and sometimes men to look at hormones and, you know, help them through this journey.
That's amazing. It's amazing. You know, I have a lot of mantras that I've developed over the years, but one of the most recent ones is we have to get the message to women that they must stop blaming themselves. Absolutely. So one of the most common themes, like the posts in the Menopause Chicks community recently is like, you know, I can't sleep, I'm dealing with hot flashes, and I've tried everything. I've quit coffee, I've quit drinking, I've cut out carbs, and all of those things might play a positive contribution, but they're also sending a message to women that it's your fault. That something's wrong with you because you drink too much coffee. Something's wrong with you because you enjoy a glass of wine. And we're not really speaking to the population and saying, hey, hormones are like, you know, the spark plugs in your car. Like, they're necessary.
That's right.
Try living for 50 years without them.
That's right. And we shouldn't, you know, just settle for that, you know, oh, your hormones drop as you get older. Just live with it. It's not. We need to optimize our hormones so we do feel young and vibrant again. Yeah. And protect our brain. Our bones. And protect our brains, our bones, our breasts, you know, our, you know, vaginal health. There's just so many things we can do that are natural.
Totally. So I love that you talked about stress, because that was one of my key learnings, you know, and I had already named my website Menopause Chicks. And then after I was like, oh, maybe like, what if it wasn't perimenopause after all? I was burnt out when I met you, you know, business, small kids, aging mother, the very life. But you taught me so much about adrenals and cortisol, and even the day, this is my second story about meeting Debbie for the first time, you printed out so much information. Like, it was like the best course I've ever had in my own health. And I remember bringing home the information in the folder and showing it to my husband, and he was sitting there reading it while I was making dinner. And I said, you know, he had this funny look on his face, and I'm like, what's up? And he goes, well, I'm reading all this information, and I know this is about you right now, Shirley, but like, I relate to everything that she shared with you, because it was like difficulty sleeping and stress management. And I know you just mentioned men, so I thought that I would throw that in, because, you know, we advocate for women's health, and that's really important, and it's always going to be my focus, but we are a stressed society.
Oh, absolutely. Stress society. Yeah. And I had just a call a couple of days ago from a husband and wife who, you know, they're in maybe late 30s, early 40s. And she said, we're burnt out. Oh, we don't, and they know, you know, she knew a little bit about hormones before in the work I did in my previous, you know, clinic. And so we're testing hormones on both her and him. And we're looking at cortisol. We're looking at estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Men can be affected with it as well. And I've done a lot of testing in men in the past, and frequently their estrogen levels come back higher than their wives. You know, and too much estrogen is not good.
Okay, you've just made my heart skip a little beat, because the fact that you are working with couples and that they are being so proactive with their health at that age gives me a lot of hope. That's
Oh, yeah.
amazing.
You know, it's really, I really think in perimenopause is, you know, it can be, if you don't know what's going on, if you don't discuss it with your spouse, it can be very destructive.
Yes.
You know, a man's looking at this woman and saying, well, she's gone a little crazy these days, you know, and, you know, she's not interested in sex anymore. She's very, very irritable. You know, they need to know what's going on. And work together as a couple to get through this journey if there is a disruption in their hormones. And, you know, men too, like you say, you know, their adrenals can be shot and they don't have the tolerance anymore either. So there's bickering going back and forth. And I can vividly remember a woman, oh, she's a gorgeous lady. She was in her early 40s and she had horrible vaginal dryness, and she had a condition where, you know, the vagina really tightens during intercourse, and it's just so painful for her, and she didn't know what to do and nothing could help. And I sent her to a physiotherapist who was specializing in vaginal health. And within 2 sessions, she was almost like cured. Unfortunately, at that point, her husband had, I guess, had an extramarital affair, and he left her. But I thought, you know, you're lost, buddy. This is a wonderful, intelligent woman who she didn't know what to do, but she was on the journey to find out what was wrong. She found it, but unfortunately, it was too late. But, you know, she's probably better off without him.
Well, that's a good segue to one of our other key messages, which is go see a pelvic floor physiotherapist at least this year. And don't wait till you have symptoms.
Well, isn't it interesting? Because, you know, not that many people know about them. And even my mother, who is 86 years old, she was complaining about stress incontinence. And I said, Mom, go to a vaginal pelvic therapist. Yeah. And she just, you know, then she went to her doctor. Her doctor told her the same thing.
Oh, good.
I thought, well, that's wonderful. Don't listen to your daughter. But I'm glad her doctor told her the same thing, because they're wonderful. They're so specialized in what they do.
That's amazing. It's amazing.
You know, and even vaginal dryness. What percentage of women have vaginal dryness? And it has to be up there in probably the 80% range when they get to menopause.
Yeah, so it's around, according to the SWAN study, it's around 19% at age 42, and it jumps to over 70% by age 69. I know that's a big timeline between there, but what's critical in knowing that information is that you can do lots of things to prevent it.
Oh, absolutely.
You can talk to women in their early 40s. I think that's really important. But the other thing is that there are a menu of options for women post-menopause. If you haven't had the conversation yet, don't assume that it's too late, or don't assume that just because you're not in a sexual relationship that it's too late, because vaginal health is way more than just sex. So
absolutely,
about moving and dancing and practicing yoga and, you know, just living with vitality, as well as preventing, you know, UTIs and incontinence. So
yeah, and that's very, very important, because it's very prevalent in it as you get older and into menopause, is the stress incontinence and the UTIs. Absolutely.
Yeah.
A funny story. I'm going to tell you this really quickly. Again, going back to my mother's stories. My mother, she was probably in her 50s or probably her 60s, mid 60s, went to the doctor because she had stress incontinence, was referred to an OBGYN, got her appointment. And he says, well, what we're going to do is give you a hysterectomy. And while we're in there, we're going to take your ovaries out, because, you know, then you'll never get ovarian cancer. I go, oh my God, for stress incontinence, you want to do a total hysterectomy? That's crazy. So I said, who is this OBGYN? Oh, and I knew who he was. I knew who he was from my working in the hospital. He was, I think, had been married 3 or 4 times, had about 10 children to support with alimony, right? And child support. I said, of course he wants to do surgery. I said, you go back there, you tell him, okay, I'll have my ovaries out, do my total hyst if you remove your testicles, because they're only getting you into trouble with these child support payments. She never had the surgery.
Oh my God. Okay. Good for her. Like, so glad that she had you as an advocate, because not every woman does have that expertise. And now you've got me thinking we could do a whole show just on the stories that we've heard and that we have heard from women.
Right.
You know, one woman posted on Saturday that, you know, she'd been suffering with vaginal dryness and pain with intercourse for a year. Her doctor prescribed a hemorrhoid cream and tested her for STDs. And it wasn't until she tried the vaginal moisturizer that she got relief. I mean, we just have 100
No, and defense of these physicians, they're not taught.
No, totally.
You know, I always shake my head too. I mean, there's so many times I've shake my head, but you know, rather than say they don't know, you know, they just sort of, you know, let's give you some Prozac, let's give you some, you know, sleeping pills, or like you say with hemorrhoid cream, that's a new one, but you know, but they're not taught, and unfortunately, they won't admit they don't know.
No, you're absolutely right, and I will defend physicians to the nth degree. But the two things that we really would love our listeners to hone in on from this conversation is they don't often admit when they don't know. Like it seems to be a difficult step to say, I don't know the answer to that, but here's, you know, the hormone nurse or someone who knows what they're talking about, who can support you. You can add this person to your health team. And the second thing is making sure that women know what they're shopping for when they're trying to manage their health. So
right.
You know, I get kind of crude in some of my analogies, but you know, if your faucet's leaking, you don't call a mechanic, you call this person that's been educated and trained and specialized in fixing and treating that problem. And that doesn't always come up in healthcare. We put a lot of pressure on our GPs and our family doctors who are taught about multiple diseases and symptoms and what to look for, but they are not trained or taught hormone balance. So that's, yeah.
And you know, there's other, you know, some doctors are, and you know, a lot of them go into sort of a private practice when they, you know, start specializing in hormones, and you've got your naturopathic doctors, but not all of them have training in bioidentical hormones.
It's so true.
You know, so, you know, sometimes, you know, ask around, you know, I mean, Shirley has a wealth of information about where if you live somewhere, she'll find out where's, you know, where you can go, you know, and this is why I sort of went into coming back into the arena, because I know that sometimes it can be very expensive to go to a practitioner who is specialized in hormones. And I've set up, you know, I do video conferences and, you know, teleconferences for women who are struggling and at a very reasonable rate. And if you are interested again in testing, I've got a link to 2 labs I use, one in the US and one in Canada. You know, and I don't always do testing, you know, sometimes women's in perimenopause, it's so classic. Let's work on your adrenals for a bit and, you know, and see how that works. Maybe put a little bit of bioidentical progesterone into your body, see how you respond to that. And then maybe, you know, a month or 2 later, let's reevaluate and see if we do have to do testing.
Yeah, it's not a magic wand. It's not a one appointment fixes all things, but it's definitely, you know, if you think of a staircase, right? It's a step in the right direction.
Right.
So let's go through, what is it like to, if someone is booking a virtual or telephone consult with you, what can they expect?
Okay, during this initial consultation, I spend about an hour. Sometimes I go over it a little bit, but I just go into the middle of their medical history. I want to know, you know, if they had surgeries in the past, and you know, when did they start their first period? When did they have their last period? What's your flow like? I'm going through sort of the, you know, the perimenopausal symptoms. First of all, I go through a whole list of adrenals, because first of all, that's to me is the most important thing. I never balance hormones without working on adrenals. So I've got a whole 2 pages of adrenal symptoms. I want to sort of get an idea if you have low cortisol, high cortisol, somewhere in between. And again, if your cortisol is either too high or too low, it robs your body of progesterone to make this very important hormone, cortisol. Right. And you know, adrenal symptoms can be just like you just feel like you're running on empty. Your threshold for stress has changed. You know, you snap a little easier. You get a little anxiety, sleep disruption, and most commonly is the tired but wired. You fall asleep at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. You're wide awake, and you know, you think cortisol is very powerful. A natural anti-inflammatory in your body. So if your cortisol levels are too low, you're going to have inflammation. You're going to have aches and pains thinking, okay, where did that come from? It's not, you don't say this because I'm getting older. I hate hearing that. Yeah, you know, I hate hearing that, because that's not the, you know, and then we go into signs and symptoms. Estrogen dominance. Now, estrogen dominance is basically too much estrogen in relationship to progesterone. Now, you can have estrogen dominance even if you have low estrogen, because if your progesterone is in the basement, you're still dominating with estrogen. So we go through a lot of symptoms of that. It could be hot flashes, night sweats, heavy periods, clotty periods. Again, the moods, anxiety, depression, PMS, I always, I sort of think about that nursery rhyme. When she was good, she was very, very good. But when she was bad, she was horrid. And it's true. When the woman with extreme PMS, you just think, who is that lady there, screaming. I did the same thing. I remember it, and I really shudder when I look back at my PMS days. Yeah. It could be, again, like the vaginal dryness. It could be loss of libido, which is very, very common, as we mentioned before. The list goes on. And then the other thing, if your adrenals are not working properly, if you have estrogen dominance, it is going to affect your thyroid. And there's hypothyroidism is the most underdiagnosed condition for women, because the doctors just look at one number, and that's your thyroid stimulating hormone, your TSH. If that's normal, everything else must be normal. And it's not true, because when you want to test your thyroid, you have to look at your TSH, free T3, T4, and even to see if you've got antibodies attacking your thyroid, which is very common. So I go through all the symptoms, and at the end of the day, depending on the age of the woman or the man, I will either recommend testing or not testing. I said, let's just try A, B, and C. And then, I want people to be on the care plan for at least 30 days. And then we look at things 30 days later with a quick little 15-minute follow-up to see if we have to tweak something. If things are fine, go ahead, just carry on. And and then from there, I usually see or hear from them maybe 6 months later, and say everything's fine, and then we follow up, and okay, good, nothing has to be tweaked, and and there's a few things that I put everybody on, and it's usually vitamin D and magnesium and essential fatty acid.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you taught me so much about magnesium and vitamin D in our first session, vitamin B. So what women could expect is they're going to walk away with some recommendations for quality vitamins and supplements that support their adrenals as well as their overall health, right? And then testing is an option. Yep. So it's something that's available to you and or the woman, because, testing can uncover some information that might not come out in conversation, or it could confirm or deny, a hunch or a hypothesis that you have, right?
Right. There's one test that we do. It's called the Chi test, and that's a little lab in Alberta, in Canada. But it looks at how your body metabolizes all these hormones, and if there's a block somewhere, if the estrogens are not being metabolized down a safe pathway. It looks at the cortisol, the cortisone. There's so much information. It's just it's mind-boggling how much information they can get from a sample of urine. But then the most testing I do is in saliva. Unless it's thyroid, then we do what's called a blood spot. You just poke your finger and put a couple of drops of blood on a block paper and send her off. It's quite interesting. I've even done for people who have extreme anxiety and depression and nothing seems to be working, we can do neurotransmitter testing. Now that's very interesting to see where your serotonin, your dopamine, your epinephrine, all these things that sort of help you with mood and drive and ambition. It's such a phenomenal testing. It's mind-boggling. And of course, you can treat your neurotransmitters with herbs and vitamins. It doesn't have to be antidepressants.
Yeah. And I bet the awareness and the information, education, and conversation goes a long way too, to helping somebody, turn the corner or get on the right track.
Right. And I just recently did my thyroid hormones because I knew I was a little baseline hypothyroid in the years past. And I still was my conversion of T4 to T3. And T3 is your active thyroid hormone. That's the one that gets your metabolism going, gets your energy going. It was on the low side. And I also was indicating that I was low in iodine. And iodine is so necessary for the thyroid. Right. And we don't get a lot of iodine in our diet these days. And I did my vitamin D level too, which is, and I spend a lot of time in the sun. I was usually, vacationing in hot places, and I don't use sunscreen. And I was taking 3,000 international units a day thinking I've got this covered, and I was low still. And so I'm up to 5,000 or 6,000 a day. and everybody's different. It depends on how your body metabolizes it. If you have a lot of extra fat, you store vitamin D in fat cells, and they're glommed onto. They don't get a systemic effect. So frequently you have to go up a little bit higher for people who are overweight on your vitamin D. And if you have darker skin, you don't do the natural conversion of D2 to D3 in your skin if you're, African American, or if you have just darker skin in general.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, I want to continue on what we can expect from an appointment with you, and then I want to come back to thyroid, so remind me about that. And so you've got your vitamin consult, you've got your option for testing. How does a woman walk away with a recommendation for hormone therapy if that is part of your recommendation and protocol?
Okay. What I do is I write up a whole suggested care plan for talking about supplements. And again, I want to talk about supplements too, because they're not all created equally. And that's very, very important.
You wrote a great blog post years ago for me on that.
Yeah. And then, if I recommend a bioidentical progesterone, usually I start with progesterone. I don't throw 3 hormones on a woman at one time. I think progesterone is your mother hormone, your precursor hormone. So even if your estrogen is a little bit low, I generally start with bioidentical progesterone and see how you feel 30 days later. If you're still sort of not feeling optimal, and for estrogen was low, I'll probably recommend some bioidentical estrogen in the form of, we call it Biest, which is 2 different estrogens mixed together. And it's always topical. I don't like oral estrogens at all. Now, because I'm a nurse, I can't write prescriptions, but I can give you a letter to bring to your doctors. Now, a lot of women in the U.S. can buy bioidentical progesterone over the counter because it's readily available. But I want to know, what brand you're taking. I want to make sure that the base is good. But most often, you can go to your doctor, ask for a prescription, and I'll tell you what to ask for. Go to a good compounding pharmacist. And I know Shirley is affiliated with Pure Pharmacy, and it's amazing. I've met the Bob Mayer, who is the founder of Pure Pharmacy, many years ago when I had my clinic. We talked and talked and talked, and he has, I think, is one of the best compounders around. Yeah. They have to have the right molecule that you're putting into the right base, the right machinery to make sure it's a homogeneous mix at the end of the day. So not all pharmacists are created equally too. Right. But this is where we can guide you. It's so important. Good quality supplements, good quality bioidentical hormones. Yeah. So then I tell you how to use it, and how often to use it. Don't overuse it. A lot of women, when they start progesterone, they think, "Oh, I'm feeling great," and more is better. More is not better.
No. That's why you have to do it underneath the guidance of a health professional. Yeah.
And in between when the initial consultation, the follow-up consultation, women are free to, send me a little email and say, okay, I'm not sure about this or what you said about that. That's why I'm here.
Cool. So like in British Columbia, for example, you could take that letter to your GP. You could also take it to your naturopath because they can prescribe as well. But you can work around the world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's the beauty of
geographical limit. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so and we'll include the information on how to contact Debbie. But there's one thing I wanted to circle back on, if you don't mind, because I'm trying to imagine our listeners. Sometimes we can geek out on some of this information, and if T1, T3, T4, if all that just rolled over your head. I think what on the thyroid conversation, we can outline what an underperforming or overperforming thyroid might look like. What are some of the signs?
Okay, hypothyroid, which is the most common. Okay, you're going to feel tired. Okay. Your hair is going to be either brittle or you're losing a bit of hair. The outer thirds of your eyebrows generally start to thin. Your nails can be cracking. You just feel like no matter what you do, you just cannot sort of, get your energy back. Weight gain is very, very common with hypothyroid. You just have to look at a piece of chocolate cake and you see you gain weight. Okay. It's just, and then again, the symptoms of adrenal fatigue and hypothyroid are very, very similar. And and that's where sometimes testing is really important, or just work on your adrenals first, because sometimes you work on your adrenals, your thyroid will turn around. Hyperthyroid is different. You've got a racing heart rate. You just feel tired or wired all the time, and it's so different. And it's very, very not as common to have hyperthyroid. Now, hyperthyroid, you definitely have to, work with a physician. Hypothyroid, there's lots you can do naturally to work on your thyroid. Yeah, but again, hypothyroid is very, very common in perimenopause and menopause. And I can remember, back in a lot of you are probably too young, but back in the 80s, I remember after I had my babies, I was trying desperately to lose the weight. And back then, the fad diet was low fat. Fat was bad for you. So you eliminate all fat from your diet. And I went to my doctor still feeling crappy and feeling horrible. And he did all the testing and, everything's normal. And your cholesterol is subnormal. I said, oh, is that good? He goes, oh, the lower the better. But no, you need cholesterol. It's a building blocks of all hormones, including your sex hormones, your thyroid hormones, your cortisol, everything. You need good fats in your diet. So, I think we were, sort of turned upside down with our standard North American diets, for many, many years. There was so much focus on the wrong things, and hopefully we're going to, turn this around. But yeah, thyroid is common. Hypothyroidism is so common, so undertreated, and so many women beat themselves up because they're gaining all this extra weight. They don't know what's happening. And, you can go down to, 900 calories a day. You might lose weight temporarily, but you're going to gain it back if you don't work on your thyroid.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot to unpack there. I think one of the things that we can maybe underscore is this is like a Rubik's Cube. This is another analogy I use all the time, but it's why it's so important to work with someone like Debbie, who is, a health professional who specializes in hormone balance, because you want to know, the relationship. Is it thyroid? Is it adrenal? Is it low iron? And all of those things are like solving a Rubik's Cube. I personally don't believe you can do that on your own. I think it's really important to surround yourself with a health team who can support you, because you deserve quality of life.
Oh, absolutely. We all deserve quality of life. Another thing you mentioned is iron right now too, because we didn't touch on that at all. So many women, when they get into perimenopause and menopause, have low iron stores. No matter what you do, as far as hormones, adrenals, if you don't optimize your iron levels, you will not resurrect.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a dog with a bone on that one. I'm trying to get the whole world to get their ferritin level checked. Listen, I could talk to you all day. I'm very excited. I know you have a consult coming up. I'm very excited that you are back in business. And I can't wait to introduce you to more women in the Menopause Chicks community. I have one final question that I like to ask all of our health professionals. And that is, what's the one thing you want women who are navigating perimenopause to menopause to know?
I think I want them to know what is common, what is normal, what is abnormal. And also, this is not a disease. Perimenopause and menopause are not diseases, and they should not be treated as diseases. And I want women to feel validated when they go to a practitioner talking about their hormones and their symptoms. I want them not to be dismissed. I want them, to understand what's going on and get some validation.
I love it. I love it. We all learn at an early age to work with a financial planner, to plan our financial life. We need to work with a hormone planner, at as early as possible. I like to say it's never too early or too late, but, the earlier that you can be aware and informed and educated, the less discomfort and suffering you are likely to experience, right?
And you remember, hormones can be disrupted from the onset of your very first period. If you have a young teenager or a young adult with polycystic ovary syndrome or endometriosis, that's a hormone imbalance.
Yes.
That's a hormone imbalance, and it can be treated at a young age. And my daughter included, she was on progesterone from I think age 22 because she had cystic ovaries.
Interesting. Yeah. So Maybe we can do another conversation about how to talk to our daughters and our mothers about
Yes.
hormones.
Yeah. Well, my mother I just visited her on the weekend. She's 87 now, and she wants to test hormones.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. We can do that.
That's amazing. Okay. Tell us how we can get a hold of you.
Okay. You can email me at debbie@thehormonenurse.com. You can look at my website is thehormonenurse.com, or you can, my phone number, got it down here somewhere, 778-913-4138. Now that's
we'll post all that information below too.
Yeah. But I'd be happy
to
speak to any one of you. And and again, education is the key. Learn about what's going on in your bodies.
Speak with us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Shelley,
and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, for sure.
Okay.
Bye now. Bye, everyone.